At 9:07 on Monday morning, your boss fires you in front of 6 people. He pushes a cardboard box across the table and asks for your badge. You say nothing, because inside your pocket is a message sent 37 minutes earlier. The deal is closed. Through a holding company, you now control 55% of the business that just fired you. He can end your job. He cannot remove you as owner. But revealing that now could destroy the deal you just risked everything to make. The company owes $2.3 million. Payroll is due in 9 days. Its largest customer can cancel in 60 days. And that customer trusts him, not you. So you pick up the box, walk out of the building you own, and call an emergency board meeting. Do you fire the man who fired you, or keep him long enough to save the company? 3 years earlier, you were not trying to become an owner. You were the person fixing everyone else's promises. The company maintained offices, apartment buildings, and commercial properties. 42 employees cleaned floors, repaired equipment, and answered emergency calls. You built schedules, tracked overtime, and took the calls that started with, "This should have been fixed yesterday." Your boss handled the customers. He was polished, confident, and fast with a promise. If a contract went well, he stood in the photograph. If it lost money, the problem belonged to the schedule, the van, or the person doing the work. One Friday night, a major client called with a flooded basement. 6 employees and 2 vans spent the weekend there. The contract price never changed. On Monday, your boss called the account a success because the customer had renewed. The founder saw the same problem. After a meeting, she asked you to stay behind. She wanted to retire. Her family did not want the company, and a competitor planned to buy the customer list, close the workshop, and remove almost half the jobs. She asked whether you knew anyone who could keep it alive. You looked through the glass at the workshop and said, "I would buy it if I had the money." She slid the financial statements across the table. Then find a way. The asking price was $2.7 million. You had $85,000. For 3 days, the idea looked ridiculous. Then a bank agreed to lend against the company's cash flow. The founder accepted part of the price over time. 2 investors supplied the rest. You invested almost everything you owned and personally guaranteed part of the debt. If the company failed, the bank could follow you home. In return, you received 55% of the shares and voting control. For the first 30 days, your ownership would remain confidential inside the company. The founder wanted you to watch the business before the announcement changed how people behaved, so you kept arriving as an ordinary employee. The ownership papers stayed in a plain folder inside your backpack. People complained about management, ignored small costs, and made promises they would never make in front of an owner. Then closing morning arrived. At 8:30, the lawyer confirmed that the shares had transferred. At 9:02, your boss placed a report on your desk. The company's largest contract looked profitable on the front page. Your calculation showed it was losing $18,000 a month after overtime and emergency work. He told you to move those costs somewhere else. You refused. 5 minutes later, he fired you for insubordination. He took your badge. The folder in your backpack still contained control of the company. From the outside, the business looked simple. A customer paid one fixed monthly fee. The company sent people, vans, and materials to keep the property running, but the price was fixed before the month began. The costs were not. For every $100 collected, about 54 went to wages. 14 went to vehicles, fuel, and materials. 9 went to insurance, software, and administration. That left $23 to cover debt, taxes, equipment, and every mistake inside the contract. One broken pipe at midnight could erase the margin for the month. Your boss had built growth by lowering prices and adding services. Weekend coverage was promised without being priced. Emergency calls were called rare even when they happened every week. Revenue climbed, so the company looked healthy. But too much work had been sold for too little money. And now you owned the consequences. You spend the afternoon after your firing at your kitchen table. The cardboard box sits on the floor. Your old badge lies beside the acquisition documents. You rebuild the company one contract at a time. The summary shows $6.8 million in annual revenue and $720,000 in operating profit. The real records tell a different story. 3 large contracts produce almost $1.9 million of revenue. Together, they create less than $70,000 of operating profit. One loses money every month. Then you find the vehicles. 7 vans are assigned to managers. 2 barely move. Fuel cards are used without job numbers. Small costs have become normal because nobody sees them together. After correcting the contracts, overtime, and fleet costs, real operating profit falls from $720,000 to about $460,000. The acquisition debt needs $280,000 in the first year. The seller financing needs another $90,000. That leaves less than $90,000 before tax, equipment, and surprises. Payroll alone is more than $100,000 every 2 weeks. Then the founder calls. The largest customer has heard that you were fired. They want to know whether the company is becoming unstable. Your boss is still the only person they trust. The revenge story is over. Now you have 9 days to protect payroll, 42 jobs, and a customer that can walk away. At the emergency board meeting, one investor wants your boss removed immediately. Another wants your ownership announced before the rumor spreads. The founder places the largest customer contract on the table. It is worth $1.2 million a year and can be canceled with 60 days' notice. Firing him would feel good. Losing the customer could cost several employees their jobs. You choose the slower move. The board reverses your termination, freezes all major pricing decisions, and calls your boss into the conference room. He enters carrying the same report he asked you to change. He expects to defend why he fired an employee. Instead, he sees the founder, the lawyer, the investors, and you sitting at the end of the table. The ownership register slides toward him. He reads your name twice. You tell him, "You had the authority to end my employment. You did not have the authority to change who owns the company." You give him 2 choices: stay for 30 days under a written transition plan with no power to change prices or staffing, or leave immediately and hand every customer relationship to the board. He stays. 3 nights later, at 4:20 in the morning, the largest customer calls about a burst pipe beneath one of its buildings. Your boss does not answer. The operations supervisor does. You meet the team in the flooded basement while still wearing the clothes you slept in. For 4 hours, you carry equipment, photograph the damage, and watch the company work without the person who claimed the customer belonged to him. At the renewal meeting the next morning, you do not offer another discount. You show the real labor, the emergency costs, and a new response plan with separate pricing for after-hours work. The customer renews at a higher price. Your boss resigns on day 11. You promote the operations supervisor who answered the phone at 4:20. Then, the company becomes smaller on purpose. You walk away from one contract that loses money every month. Revenue falls from $6.8 million to $6.4 million. 2 unused vans are returned. Fuel cards require job numbers. Emergency work is billed separately. Weekend service is repriced. Every major contract receives a margin review. 12 months after the acquisition, operating profit reaches $920,000. The debt falls to just under $1.9 million. At a conservative valuation, the company is worth about $4.1 million before debt. After subtracting the debt, your 55% stake is worth roughly $1.2 million on paper. But the bank restricts distributions while the loan is high, and the company still needs cash for payroll, vehicles, and equipment. Only $40,000 has reached your personal account. You are technically a millionaire. You still drive the same car to the same building. Your old badge now sits in a drawer beside the ownership register. So what happens when your boss fires you without knowing you own the company? For a few minutes, it feels like the perfect revenge story. Then the debt arrives. Then payroll. Then the customer. Then 42 people who only care whether the company survives Friday. Your boss had authority because of his job title. You had ownership because you carried the loans, the guarantees, and the consequences. The most important moment was not when the ownership register crossed the table. It was 4:20 in the morning, standing in a flooded basement, when the company needed someone to answer. Real control is quieter than people expect. It lives inside contracts, cash flow, and decisions that still matter after everyone else leaves the room. Your boss thought firing you ended your place in the company. Instead, it revealed the difference between managing a business and owning what happens next. You did not buy the company to defeat him. You bought it to become the owner the business needed. Worth frame. Money looks different from the inside,